Welcome to the AC 24/7 Top Story Countdown. I'm Sonia Baghdadi. We'll guide you through the biggest headlines of the day. Our focus, advocating our rights, advocating health, and advocating Earth. Here's our pick for number 5.
It's been fascinating and very moving to be here over the course of the last few days and see the ceremonies and the events around D-Day. Up until now, it was almost a celebration, largely, of D-Day and what came after it, the liberation that came to France and then to the rest of Europe. In fact, we stayed in the first French town liberated after D-Day, and you see the gratitude passed down through the French generations. Today, however, is different. Today is purely a day of memorials. It is a day of commemoration, and that's to remember all of the lives lost here on the D-Day invasion, and you get a sense of that. About 160,000 paratroopers and forces landed here. Thousands of those gave their lives, and you can see the gravestones here, the French and the American flags. And in the speeches, you hear them talk about the heroism, the valor, and the values that they defended in carrying out that operation. Omaha Beach here behind me, this was one of the landing spots during the invasion. All along the beachhead here, first the paratroopers, and then the amphibious assault, the largest certainly in modern European history. We have also heard in many of the speeches the connection between the values that Allied forces were defending 79 years ago and the values that the West is standing up for in Ukraine, in feeding the Ukrainian military, weaponry, equipment, and more. It was Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin who made that connection earlier today.
Every D-Day, citizen by citizen, we remember that we each have the ability and the responsibility to fight for the principles that drove the Allied armies forward.
There are about 50 or so World War II veterans in attendance here. I had a chance to speak with a few of them, and each opportunity like that is absolutely incredible because their memories of those days are absolutely sharp, and hearing what it was like, whether it was storming the beaches or the Battle of the Bulge or even fighting in the Pacific, all of those stories are incredible. Austin himself made that point. He saluted the World War II veterans. He said, "You saved the world. We merely need to defend it."
You can stream the Advocate channel now. Download our Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, or Google Play Store app for instant access. The countdown continues with number 4.
We haven't yet seen the migrants who flew on 2 private jets to Sacramento. 16 Friday, 20 more Monday. Yet a volunteer helping them shared a recording from one of them.
So he's saying, I want to say how grateful I am and long live Sacramento.
Sacramento's mayor welcomed the immigrants, yet condemned how they arrived.
I don't want to talk about who may have done this, who likely did this. He are not worth dignifying.
California state leaders are more direct.
So there's a pattern here. There's documentation here. The document clearly that we have in our possession says the state of Florida. So we believe that the state of Florida, Governor DeSantis, is behind it.
Tuesday, the state of Florida took credit for the migrants' flight from El Paso to Sacramento, saying in a statement a contractor ensured they made it safely to Catholic charities. The statement continues, Florida's voluntary relocation is precisely that, voluntary. Those who have met the migrants say they are legally in the country and reported being promised help getting jobs, shelter, and clothing if they went someplace else.
That dream quickly became a nightmare. They were lied to and deceived.
El Paso's mayor says no one consulted the city before taking the migrants and says we would never use individuals in a political stunt. One complication, some of the migrants now in California have court dates scheduled in other locations. I'm Emily Schmidt, reporting.
TheAdvocateChannel.com looks at the world through the lens of equality and inclusion. Subscribe, like, and share now. AC 24/7's Top Story Countdown continues with our producer's pick for number 3.
From the city that never sleeps to the city that can barely breathe. New York briefly topping the list of world's worst air quality Tuesday by IQAir.com. Iconic views in a haze as smoke from Canadian wildfires drifts into the U.S. Across the Northeast and Midwest, millions of people are under varying air quality alerts. Several cities designated as having unhealthy air for sensitive groups, meaning small children and the elderly should reduce outdoor activity. In parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, another threat Tuesday, lightning. Rare, dry thunderstorms are forecast in the Mid-Atlantic region, where NOAA's Storm Prediction Center says conditions are primed for possible wildfire spread.
Fire Center duty officer speaking.
Canadian officials say they're currently tracking more than 400 active fires, and at least 26,000 people were forced to evacuate, unsure of what they have left.
I want to go home, and I'm sure that everybody else here does too.
The country's prime minister making a public appeal for donations to help fire victims.
People can support their neighbors who are facing incredibly devastating losses all across the country.
Back in the U.S., forecasters are watching a cold front that could push the smoke further south and east before week's end. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting.
Like the Advocate channel on Facebook for the best way to get updated stories that advocate for equality, justice, our rights, and more. AC 24/7 continues with today's top 2 pick.
A candlelight vigil in Saratoga County, New York for Kaylin Gillis, a 20-year-old fatally shot in April after her friend turned into the wrong driveway. The 20-year-old Gillis is among the more than 18,000 people who have died from gun violence so far this year, according to the Gun Violence Archive. And so is Ajika A.J. Owens, the 35-year-old mother of 4 from Florida, who was fatally shot last week after an argument with a neighbor escalated.
My grandchildren's mother was shot and killed with her 9-year-old son standing next to her. She had no weapon. She posed no imminent threat to anyone.
Samuel Schwartz, who lost his cousin in the 2018 Parkland school shooting, is holding a multi-day sit-in at the U.S. Capitol.
After every shooting, we hear on Twitter that lawmakers and citizens call for action, but there's no action taken. So that's why I decided to lead this, and that's why all these people are here with me. We are here to make sure that something happens.
A new report from the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions says gun violence in the U.S. hit a record high in 2021 with nearly 49,000 gun deaths, with increases in both gun-related homicides and suicides.
We are hoping that Leader Schumer listens to us and puts the assault weapons ban on the Senate floor for a vote immediately.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Follow the Advocate channel on Twitter and Instagram to stay updated on stories that matter every day. We're now at our number 1 story of the day. Take a look.
It was supposed to be a day of joy and celebration for high school graduates who were gathering with their families, posing for photos right here in this park behind me after their commencement celebration, which took place inside a local theater less than a block away from where we are standing right now. Police say a gunman inside this park opened fire, killing 2 people during yet another mass shooting in America.
Obviously, this should have been a safe space. People should have felt safe at a graduation.
A safe place turned deadly Tuesday night as gunshots rang out following a high school graduation in Virginia. Graduates and their families were celebrating and taking photos in Richmond's Monroe Park when chaos erupted.
Just everybody started running and I pushed her down on the ground. We got down on the ground and it's just chaos from there. You just kept hearing shots. It was like 8, 9, 10 shots.
Several non-gunshot related injuries were also reported due to the panic as people rushed to safety, including a 9-year-old girl who was hit by a car.
People were having panic attacks, falling on the ground, screaming. Some people fell. One child was hit by a car.
Richmond police say a 19-year-old man who they believe was the shooter is in custody. Huguenot High School's ceremony was the second commencement to happen at the Altria Theater Tuesday. A third scheduled ceremony for later that night was canceled. Richmond's mayor expressed outrage over the tragedy and promised those who are guilty will be brought to justice.
This should not be happening anywhere. Anywhere. A child should be able to go to their graduation and walk out their graduation and enjoy the accomplishment with their friends and their families.